this book took me more than 6 years to do. Though, as I said, it's not a book which is sort of written in the strict sense of the term. And the reason for that was that it's a book of documents about 1947. And as you know, there hasn't been a year so far in Indian history which is so important, so significant, where so much history was made, if you can put it like that. It's a very different type of book because it's aimed not only at the academic, but it's aimed at every citizen of India is a potential reader of this book. The idea was to bring into every home, every library, every satchel of every student maybe a book. I know it's a heavy book, but the reason for that is we just couldn't cut down or edit anymore because everything was just so important for this period, and we had a whole range of documents. The idea was that it's not enough to write about this period. I and many others have written about this period. I did a book called Independence and Partition many years ago, and along with others I had written also a very popular book called India's Struggle for Independence. But somewhere I was convinced, along with my fellow editors on this project, that we had to bring out a series of documents where people could judge for themselves what was happening. It was not my version, not the version of X author or X historian or X expert, but this was a period which has left an impact on the lives of so many people, whether as refugees, whether as ordinary citizens in free India, and the country owed it to them, historical scholarship owed it to the ordinary citizen of this country, that here were documents which were there for them to go through and see and decide for themselves what had really happened. Let me tell you, first of all, that it was a truly stupendous task and a very challenging one. And as I said, it was not only that it took 6 years and a much longer time than any book that I've actually written, but it was the most challenging and most difficult task. And the reason for this was very simple. The reason was not only because we were dealing with a wide variety of materials, of course that was there. The challenge was how to select those documents which tell a story. You see, any document that you pick up, say a letter, typically talks about 10 different things. Now, when you talk about 10 different things in a letter, that letter becomes useless from the point of view of a historian. We are looking for a document which tells one story, preferably, because if we pick up a letter which tells 10 different stories and we take, say, one extract from that, 3 lines about something, 6 lines about partition, 8 lines about Mountbatten, right? We are going to be doing scissors and paste and putting it in different places, and it's not going to make sense to the reader at all. So the real challenge was to go through and collect thousands of documents. Eventually, the book is 1350 odd pages, which sounds like a lot, but it would really amaze you to know that our catchment was thousands of documents. So we literally, I have in my office about 3 cupboards full of materials which we rejected. So from that you can make out how arduous and difficult the process of selection was. First, as I said, readability was the key issue. Targeting one subject was a key issue. But apart from that, given the fact that our brief, I must state this here, that this book is part of a project of the Indian Council of Historical Research, uh, which started this project many years ago to bring out a set of documents on the last decade of colonial rule. And the brief for the editors of this project, one editor was chosen for every year, a historian or who was an expert on that particular period, on that particular year. And this was meant to be India's answer, quote unquote, to a very famous series called the Transfer of Power volumes, which His Majesty's government, rather Her Majesty's government, London, had brought out, and they had come out with these documents, 12 documents from 42 to 47, the very important years, last years of colonial rule, documenting the constitutional relations between India and Great Britain. And the Indian government decided at some point, the Ministry of Human Resources, that the Indian side of that had to be brought out. But luckily for us, for historical scholarship and for all of us in India today, luckily this brief was given to the Indian Council of Historical Research, which is an autonomous organization, so there was no government interference at all. And as I said, an editorial board was composed, made up of 10 eminent historians, who were then told to look after each year. And the brief that I was given, for example, for 1947 was that it had to be something which, apart from being objective and giving a diversity of documents and presenting a diversity of materials, the brief was that, quote unquote, the Indian point of view on the freedom movement should be there, which meant that we did not give that much importance to the colonial archives, because already the colonial archives had been drawn upon for the transfer of power volumes. Yes, where the colonial archives told the story about the Indian freedom struggle, like, you have the Home Political Department and you have the fortnightly reports coming in from the provinces telling you about what's happening where, which communist, where the Communist Party is, fomenting some trade union struggle somewhere, or there are communal riots somewhere, then of course we took cognizance of the colonial archives. But otherwise, on the whole, my favorite document, and you'll find that maybe that bias has come out in the book and I don't mind, was the newspaper. Because I found the newspaper to be the most representative. The editorials were fantastic, the cartoons were wonderful, I have reproduced many of them, and the letters to the editor were absolutely the most amazing documents that you will ever find. And what a contrast with today, when you go on social media and Twitter or something, and people just write 2-3 lines. And their letters to the editor were so serious that showed a very informed public, a very active public sphere, and you had people who knew what they wanted. In fact, I would say that on any issue, whether it was how the boundary lines should be divided, should be drawn between India and Pakistan, you would find people not only sending in the lines and how they should be, they would draw maps, and they would make a whole very, very well argued out, almost a legal case, as it were, you would find in the letters. Sometimes I would find the letters to the editor would give you more material than you would even find in the official documents submitted by the Congress Party or the Muslim League Party. So my favorite was really the newspaper, and I've used a lot from the newspaper. But of course, there were, we have a lot of material from the letters of the leaders. And here again, I took a lot of care to see that the already well-known stuff, like Nehru, Gandhi, Sardar Patel, their documents, their letters are already published. They are there in the public domain. So we shouldn't be repeating those. So wherever necessary, we have taken those, but we have tried to always focus on, draw attention to the relatively unknown, the everyday life, the relatively unknown Indian. Among the parties, if I have a document from, say, somebody from the Socialist Party and somebody from the Communist Party, and I had a choice to make, I couldn't keep both, I would take it from the Socialist Party. If I had a letter from a trade union leader, I would take it from there rather than from Nehru. So everywhere, I think the focus has been to look at the story as it unfolded and to see the popular aspects of the struggle and to highlight those. And as I said, wherever possible, I know it's very difficult to, because ordinary people don't leave diaries. Ordinary people don't leave interviews, recorded interviews, as we know. But wherever it's possible, sometimes second-hand, as I said, through newspapers, through reports, by press reports, but wherever possible, I have tried to present the documents from the point of view of the ordinary Indian and from the point of view of the everyday life of India as we saw it, the unfolding in 1947 in those momentous months.